Chizo on the beat.
Shalom. First, I like to say all praise to the Most High for the Spirit. All praise to Yahushua. And praise to Yahushua, his first begotten son, your elder brother, Adam, the first ruler of the world. The one where all this all began. The man y'all so-called Jesus, whose real name is Yahushua. Some respect need to be put on his name, but we better go ahead and get into it. Alright, so today's lesson is going to be about the nations, like where they came from. So the first things first, there's really no such thing as race. There's only nations and nationalities. And nationalities all deals with the fathers that started off. So you are the nation of your father. So if your father started this nation, you come from his nation. And they're on and so forth. And usually nations look alike because the father of that nation, well, would look like his kids. Or his kids would look like his father. So if your daddy was a dark-skinned man, you would probably more than likely come out as a dark-skinned man. The father of your nation was a dark-skinned man. Unless you mingle with other people, then you might come out a little lighter tone, but it doesn't change the fact that you still come from a nation of your father. Alright. Now, first thing you have to begin is you got to start at the flood, right? With Noah. Justified. Alright. And he called his name Noah, saying, "This same shall comfort us concerning our works and the toil of our hands. And because of the ground which the Lord has cursed, and Lamech never begat Noah 595 years and begat." So we know that the last person that survived the first world, right, was Noah. And you get that in Genesis 6. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the first earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh." So he's a physical being. Yet his days shall be 120 years. So they'll live 120 years. So our lifespan cut short from down there 1,000 years to 120. Everybody didn't live 1,000 years. It was just the generations of Adam. The people that came from Adam's gene pool. And there was other people around during the time of Adam. Adam was just the last line to survive. And there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of men, they bare children, and to them the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So the sons of God, once they started dwindling down and losing God-like status, they had sex with mortal women. And they gave birth to children that were real strong, and they were like powerful during the ancient times, and they were men of fame. So they were famous men. But the Most High saw that the wickedness of men was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously. So the Most High seen that everything this nigga thought, people were thinking about, which is on the earth, was nothing but evil shit. And it repented the Lord that he made man on earth, and grieved him. And so now he felt bad that he even created mankind. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, the insects, the fowls of the air, for repenting me that I made them. So in other words, it makes him feel bad that he even created them. But Noah found grace. Noah found mercy in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was just a man and perfect in his generation. So around his time, his generation, during his family tree, out of his whole family, he was the man that did the right thing, who was trying to do things the right way. And Noah walked with God. So when he say he walked with God, it means he followed the ways of the Most High. So he walked the ways of the Most High. And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now this is where it all began, right? It starts with these 3 sons. And the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh, all had corrupted his way upon the earth. So everything was corrupted. Everybody was mentally fucked up after the serpent came. This man, in the first world, that caused mankind to end it. Before he reincarnated into the white man. So during this time, it was the beginning of how it all fucked up. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So he said he's gonna kill everybody. And the Ark of Goodwood, Boom Shop. Alright, so we know the story of Noah's Ark. Thus did Noah, and Noah did accordingly. Everything God said. So if you don't know the story of Noah's Ark, I'm gonna give you a little short answer. Basically, the earth was flooded. And the Lord said to Noah, come through thou all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteousness before me in this generation. So out of all that generation, only Noah was the one that found righteousness, right? It was Noah. So let's get into it. Like, some people might want to say, well, it's impossible for Noah to be able to repopulate the earth, because who is he gonna do it with? Like women, you know what I'm saying? We'll do it with, like, kids, and or did they have sex with their moms and all that? Well, what people don't know is Noah and his wife had 3 kids, and their wives, and his 3 kids had their own 3 wives. So it was no need for that, right? When we go to Peter, three and 20. All right. First Peter 3 and 20. Which sometimes were disobedient when once the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah. While the ark was preparing, wherein few, that is, there were 8 souls were saved by water. So there was 8 souls that were saved. So Noah was one of them. Who would be the other one? Well, he had 3 sons, right? So that's 4. And then they all had 4. There was 4 wives. See, it was 8 souls. Noah was one of them. He had 3 sons. They each all had a wife. So they started populating the planet, right? And when you go back in history, the further and further you go back, you gotta realize that the black hair exists in history. Yeah. So if you go into Genesis 10, white people didn't exist at all until a very like thousands upon thousands of years later. Now, first albino probably existed a little bit before that, but the actual pale man didn't exist until years later. And that's when lighter skinned tribes started to come on. Lighter skinned people are fairly new thing. The races of the earth today comes from, I said Noah three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, for people that believe that, like I said, them 8 souls didn't represent their wives, we're going to go ahead and bring that up. Genesis 7:7. And Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Okay, that's one verse. Go down, scroll down further. 13. In the self same day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth and the sons of Noah and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. All right. Bring that up. Let's see, 8 and 18. Let's go and bring that up. And Noah went forth and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Right? So that confirms that they were populated the planet with their own women, their own kids. And I think this is like after like their third cousin or something. So they wasn't really doing no, weird shit. Over time, it became a period of time where you wouldn't have to do that anyway. So now these 3 sons are the 3 nations, or whatever you would like to call it, race, even though the idea of a race doesn't really exist. There's only one race of people, which is the humanoid, or which I would call a human race, or the race of man, which was actually named after Adam. But, we're going to call it the proper term, 3 nations that fought to create the other nations of today. And the races or the so-called nations of today actually comes or stem from these 3 brothers. They are the root of all the people on this earth, starting from Noah, who comes from Noah, like Adam, who comes from Adam, just from the line of Adam. That's why they try to say Adam is the first man, but Adam existed right before this world even existed. So if anything, Noah would be the first man of this world. After the ark landed, so after the flood and the world dried up, right? The ark landed, and these 3 brothers went to go populate their own lands. You know what I'm saying? They all went to different parts of the location in the Middle East, and they populated different lands, and those lands were named after them. And then they had children. Those children became a nation, and that nation was named after them. So Ham went to populate, which I would call the continent of Africa, but it's really called the land of Ham because he's the one that populated that place. And then his children were born there, and they became a big nation. It was the nation of Ham. And then his children had descendants, and they branched off, creating different tribes and different families and tribes through that land, like the land of Cush, Mizraim, and all that. But they all come from Ham. He's the originator of those nations that branched. So the core founder of the nation of the Africans, or the father of the so-called African people, would be called Ham. The best way I can say is you have the father of your nation, then the father of your tribe, and as you have kids along the way, the tribe becomes a nation as well, because the tribe will get bigger and so on and so on. And that's how the nations form. Now, how do we prove what by Ham, like where he populated? Alright, so For the people that's not too familiar with scriptures, you know, we're not gonna allow no excuses. We're gonna use Google. So you look up Bible, you look up Ham, right? Yeah. Right. Now, so if you go to Google, type in Ham, it will tell you that Ham resides in what? Egypt. All right, look at this. All right. So these were your so-called Egyptians. This is where they started. His descendants, his children, populated the what? The adjoining parts of Africa and Asia. And this source comes directly from Flavius Josephus. Ham descendants are interpreted by Flavius Josephus and others as having populated Africa and adjoining parts of Asia. The Bible refers to Egypt as the what? The land of Ham. And where is Egypt at? Africa. Right? So, and then they give you the verses right there. You can go to one, two, just put in Psalm, right? You can get the verses for it. Yeah, Psalm. What is it doing, bro? Alright, Psalm 78. Now, who did the Most High smite firstborns in Egypt? Firstborn in Egypt, right? That's where in Africa, right? So, when the Most High was killing firstborns, he was killing African babies. He was smiting African babies. And smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of their strength in the tabernacle of Ham. In the homes of Ham, the tents of Ham. Now, we get further to the point when it comes down to the African nation or the nation of Ham. Let's go back to now. Let's just use biblical proof. Let's just continue with the biblical proof, right? We already used Google. I'm going to go back to these verses. 106:22. Wondrous works in the land of Ham, and terrible things by the Red Sea. Whoa, what? So where is Ham by? Boom. The Red Sea. Alright, so look. This is Google Maps. You can look at Google Maps. And where it says they were near, it says they were near the Red Sea. Now you can put Red Sea in Google Maps and find both Jerusalem, right, and Israel. Right next to Egypt. Right next to the what? Boom. The Red Sea. Where's Egypt? Right here. Boom. So Ham went right into Egypt. Here go the land of Ham. There go the Red Sea. There go Israel and Jerusalem. So people want to be like, oh, that's not the African tribes. That's not what they're talking about in the Bible. That's not what we're talking about. Let's go ahead and prove it. We go further than that, right? You know, so we about to prove how the Hamites are the Africans, and Africans are not Israelites who's going to war with them. They're not the same people. Boom. Israel also came into Egypt. We came into Egypt because we was taking that over. And Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham, and he increased his people greatly and made them stronger than their enemies. We took that bitch over. That's what we was doing. That's why, you want to know why we were sold? This is why we were sold. We was a fucking problem. That's why. You know what I'm saying? We want to continuously prove that, you know, we proved over and over again that this was the land of the Hamites are the African people. You know, 106, 22. The Wanderers works in, I already did that. I already did that one. You know what? First Chronicles, I believe, 4 and 40. And they found fat pastures and good, and the land was wide and quiet and peaceable, for they of Ham had dwelt there of old. So the Hamite nation, or the Hamitic people, or the African, so-called Africans, or the Hamite people are African, the so-called Africans, because Africa is actually named after a Roman general. And the language of Africa, African, is not even the language of those people that stay there. That's a Dutch language. African is a Dutch language. That's a Dutch language. That's a language of Europeans. All right. Yo, they really updated this. I wonder when this was updated. Because right after everybody was calling them out on this shit, they want to say it's clearly a different language. But it's very similar, isn't it? Very similar. 1040s, 1940s. That was not updated. This shit was not updated in 1940s. Okay, so they already started on trying to figure out how to lie about this shit. Anyway, African language is also called Cape Dutch. Self-explanatory. It's not the first time Google lied, but it says it in your face. African language is also called Cape Dutch. West Germanic, what Germanic language? It's a language from the Germans, which is West Germanic language of South Africa, developed from 17th century Dutch, sometimes called Netherlandic. So regardless of them trying to say in Google, look, Google lies a lot, bro. So instead of them trying to say that it is the same language, it originated from the Dutch language. It is the Dutch language. It came from Germanic people. It's a German Dutch language. They don't even speak their language. That's not a French language. It's a Dutch. Well, yeah, it's not their language. It's a Dutch language. And the other language they speak is French, which is also not the language of their people. So, and they really want to hold on to that and say like that's a title that they gave this dude for conquering them. That is not the title that these Africans be lying, bro. That is not a title that they gave. Scipio Africanus was given by the African people. This nigga was called Africanus before he even came over there. Him and his father. So, and then on top of that, I would like to ask, like, which one of these Africanus are they talking about? Because Scipio Africanus, the first, was already called that, and he was called that as a general. It was a general term for their people. It wasn't, the Africans didn't give them that, because after they conquered, they renamed everything. So, like, even those ancient Babylonians be lying. They the daughter of Babylon. They the ancient Babylonians. So the original Babylonians are lying for I guess that little bitch or whatever. Alright. We can go back into the fact that Egypt being the land of Ham. I'm about to go ahead and get back to it again. I'm gonna pull that back out of the scripture. You got the physical proof. Now I'm about to pull that back out of the scriptures. My bad, King. What can we look up? Cause I keep going over the 106. I'm about to locate near the Red Sea. It says located near the Red Sea over and over again. About I don't want to keep running on when it comes to the same thing. So I just want to bring out at least one more verse. Probably a separate verse if I can remember it. So I brought out 78. I brought out 105. I brought out verse 103. Yeah, it don't matter. That's enough for now. Well, yeah, that's enough. Yeah, that's enough for now. So I'm about to go into like eventually how he basically populated Ham. So Ham had children. So there's brothers that went to different lands. Ham had 3 sons, Cush. Now y'all know about the land of Cush, which is in Africa. Mizraim, another land in Africa, and Canaan. See, the way we name lands, we named them after the father of that people. So let's say the father of that whole area would be Ham. But let's say like a part of Ghana in Africa, that would be like Kush or some shit, or Kenya would probably be like Canaan, because the father of that place would be called Kenya or some shit like that. Like the son of Ham in that specific location when we went over there would be called, well, when he populated that spot was called Kenya. So after a certain amount of territory split, certain sons did great things, branching off their own nations and their own little lands and shit. But overall, ultimately, they all are the children of Ham. They come from the children of Ham, who is the son of Noah. But they branched out, created their own nations. They're a separate nation from the nation of Noah. See, Noah is not the father of that nation. Well, he probably would be. But overall, Noah is more like the nationality of Adam, because Adam is a generation of his children. And then before that, then Ham, Shem, and Japheth branched out their own nations between them. All right, so Cush was the oldest brother, who went over to the land you now call ancient Ethiopia. That's the land of Cush. You know, people who are from our place, some call Kemet. If you're part of a conscious community, you might understand this or whatever with fake conscious shit. And it's really not called Kemet, but it's really the land of Cush, because the father of that place was called Cush, and the people there were called Cushites. And you know, Brother Polite know a little bit about shit like that. Later, even with his line, but later after the fall of one of his descendants, Nimrod, who created the first empire and the first one world government, because he found a way to get everybody to speak the same language again. A situation happened where the name was later changed to Babylon, which means confusion. So the land of Ham, eventually one of his sons, was Nimrod. He ended up uniting that whole land together. And that was like the headquarters of the rulership of the world at one point. And they got destroyed, and it was called confusion. As a matter of fact, Babylon don't just mean confusion. It means confusion by mixing. Let's go ahead and prove that. Babylon actually means confusion by mixing. Babylon. You can go to this the Yiddish root, you know what I'm saying? But you take the little vowel points out, you get like Assyrian. So right now, it's like, I guess Arabic. It's supposed to be a Syrian text, but it's kind of like a little bit closer to more like Yiddish than anything. Then you take the vowel points, where you get, it's still like vowels in this language, so it's like still Assyrian. But after that, people be thinking Arabic is Hebrew, but it's not. It's Yiddish. This is a more Assyrian is close to Hebrew text, and then before that, you get the Paleo Hebrew, and you use this to translate to the Paleo Hebrew. All right, and that's a little short lesson on how you translate that. But anyway, we're about to go to Babylon. Now, what name Babel? And the reason why it's called Babylon, people don't even get the message. Like stop babbling. Like, stop all that confusing talk. I mean, stop saying dumb shit or retarded shit that don't matter. So, Babylon. Babel or Babylon means confusion by mixing. Babel or Babylon, the ancient site or capital of Babylon, modern Hilla, situated on Euphrates, right? And where is that by? That's by Africa. That's Africa. Right there near the river Euphrates. That's Africa. Right. So Babylon means confusion by mixing. So they were very confused people. Now, why was it called confusion by mixing? Because it was like they was like whores, right? It was like America. They let everybody in their nation, like a whore would. She let everybody inside. So, you know. Now, Kush had sons, right? He had sons. His sons were Seba, Havilah, and I believe Septa. But with this one, we don't even know how to use scriptures at the moment. We'll go back to it, but we're gonna use a worldly source, to prove what we're saying. So you go to Google, type in Havilah, right? Or just go to Google, type in Havilah, right? Go to Wikipedia. Now, when you look down, it says possible locations, and it'll tell you where is that. And we already went over the garden in my other videos. I would prove where Havilah is. But Havilah, if you look at the popular locations, it says it's in the what? It's in the what? W.F. Albert, all right, in 1992, publication, the location of the Garden of Eden states that the Havilah of Genesis chapter 2 refers certainly to the African Havilah rather than aesthetic Asiatic Havilah, which lay opposite since it is said to produce good gold, gum, resin, malachites, all of which are important products of the Nubian desert and do not seem to be out Saudi Arabia. Well, see, what people don't understand is like they edited this. People tend not to understand that there's two Havilahs. There's one that belongs to the Africans, and then there's one that belongs to Saudi Arabia, and that's for Saudi Arabia, right? Land of Havilah was like more like was in there was an African spot in Saudi Arabia, but eventually it just became Saudi Arabia, which was the Asiatic area. And that was that land of Havilah that was across from Egypt. Because Havilah went to go populate both of those spots before that territory was taken over by the Persians, or what you would call your modern day Saudi Arabians or Indians or whatever, or the children of, I believe, Shem or Ishmaelites, whatever. Later on, who gave the son Ishmael, the eldest son of Abraham, that was going to get sacrificed. That was the reason he was going to get sacrificed, because of how he moved today. But basically, Yeah. I am Tuava Pop. Trying to shorten up this video. I might